There was a time when every American highway led to an orange roof. Howard Johnson's had more than 1,000 locations, 28 flavors of ice cream, and nearly $400 million a year in revenue. For millions of families, those restaurants weren't stops along the road. They were the road trip. Then the orange roofs went dark. By 2022, a single location in Lake George, New York, was all that remained of the chain that once defined how America traveled and ate. So how does an empire like that just disappear? That story begins with a man with $30,000 in debt. Howard Deering Johnson was born in Boston in 1897 and spent his childhood in Quincy, Massachusetts, a city of shipyards and quiet neighborhoods just south of Boston Harbor. His father owned a cigar shop, but when illness and debt claimed the business, the family's security vanished. Howard was still a teenager when his father died, leaving him with more responsibility than hope. He worked as a clerk, then as a pharmacist's assistant, always restless, always looking for a way out of the shadow of loss. By 1925, Howard was 28 and desperate for a fresh start. With just $500 borrowed from his mother, he bought a small corner shop on Beale Street in Quincy. The place was a patchwork of a drugstore, a newsstand, and a modest soda fountain. The shelves were thin, the counters worn, and the debts, nearly $30,000, hung over him like a storm cloud. Quincy's Main Street offered little promise, and the business teetered on the edge from the start. Howard opened early, closed late, and did everything himself, serving sodas, counting receipts, scrubbing floors. He was not a visionary yet. He was a young man with a ledger full of red ink and a stubborn refusal to give up. There were no orange roofs, no roadside signs, and certainly no talk of empire. The only thing that set his shop apart was the feeling that each day might be the last. Survival was not guaranteed. For Howard Johnson, the road to the American highway began at a counter in Quincy with a handful of coins and a mountain of debt. Ice cream changed everything for Howard Johnson. In the cramped back room of his Quincy shop, Howard began tinkering with recipes, chasing a taste that would set his counter apart from every other soda fountain in Massachusetts. He doubled the butterfat, refusing to cut corners, and insisted on real vanilla, real fruit, and a richness that left ordinary ice cream tasting thin by comparison. The result was dense and creamy, the kind of dessert that lingered on the tongue and in the mind. Word spread quickly. Soon, families came not just for a soda or a quick bite, but for a scoop of Johnson's new ice cream. Then two, then three. By the summer of 1926, Howard took a gamble on a 22-foot wooden stand at Wollaston Beach. The salty air mixed with the sweet churn of his ice cream, drawing crowds of sunburned vacationers and restless travelers. Here, the business shifted from a local lifeline to a destination. People drove miles for a cone, lured by the promise of something special. The menu grew with the legend. 28 flavors: banana, pistachio, burgundy cherry, butter pecan, each one carefully tested and fiercely guarded. The number itself became part of the Howard Johnson's myth, a roadside promise that no matter where you stopped, the taste would be the same. It was not just about novelty. It was about dependability, indulgence, and a little escape from the ordinary. For many, the memory of a Hojo cone, cold, rich, melting fast in the summer heat, became the flavor of family vacations and the open road. In 1935, Howard Johnson made a decision that would change not just his business, but the American roadside forever. He didn't just sell his name to a friend, he sold a blueprint. The first Howard Johnson's franchise arrived that year, offering more than a menu or a sign. It was a complete operating system delivered in a thick packet of building plans, decor instructions, recipes, and rules. Every new location came with strict directions. The roof must blaze orange, the walls must be white, the shutters turquoise. The cupola and weather vane on top, Simple Simon and the Pieman, served as a promise to travelers that they'd found the real thing, no matter how far from Quincy they wandered. Inside, the knotty pine paneling and checked curtains created a sense of comfort that felt both homey and deliberate. The smell of fried clams and fresh rolls was always the same, whether you stopped in Connecticut or Ohio. Every booth, every counter, every uniform followed the same script. Johnson's vision was not just about food, but about trust. He wanted families to know exactly what they'd get before the car even pulled in. To keep that promise, Howard built a commissary network that stretched across the Northeast. Central kitchens in Brockton and other cities churned out pies, ice cream, and chowder, shipping them by refrigerated truck to each restaurant. The recipes, especially for the famous 28 flavors, were guarded and replicated with military precision. Franchisees paid royalties, but what they really bought was consistency. The system left little room for improvisation, but that was the point. In a country still learning to love the open road, Howard Johnson's became a beacon of reliability. The orange roof didn't just stand out against the horizon. It stood for a new kind of promise, the same meal, the same welcome, every single time. The outbreak of World War II brought the brakes to the open road. Gasoline and tire rationing emptied highways, and the easy rhythm of family travel vanished almost overnight. Howard Johnson's, which had thrived on the promise of leisure and mobility, faced a world where vacations were postponed and roadside diners sat quiet. Yet the chain found purpose in the war effort. Instead of families, it was soldiers who filled the dining rooms. Throughout the 1940s, Howard Johnson supplied meals to U.S. Army troops, feeding thousands at military bases and training camps. The commissary kitchens that once sent pies and chowder to beach stands now turned out hearty, reliable fare for the armed forces. The orange roof became a sign not just of comfort, but of duty. When peace returned in 1945, so did the hum of engines and the call of the highway. American families, flush with hope and new cars, took to the roads in record numbers. The post-war boom sparked a new era of travel. Children pressed their faces to the glass, watching for the first flash of orange on the horizon. Parents, weary from hours behind the wheel, trusted the familiar promise: clean bathrooms, safe parking, and a menu that pleased both picky eaters and tired adults. Howard Johnson's was no longer just a place to eat. It was a ritual, a marker of progress along the journey. Sensing this shift, the company expanded beyond restaurants. The first Howard Johnson's Motor Lodge opened in Savannah, Georgia in 1954, offering families a place to sleep under the same brand that fed them. By the early 1960s, more than 500 motor lodges dotted the American map, often standing side by side with the restaurants. This seamless blend of food and lodging turned Howard Johnson's into a full-service stop, a home away from home for millions. Turnpike locations became prized real estate. On the newly built Pennsylvania and New Jersey turnpikes, Howard Johnson's operated exclusive service plazas, feeding a captive audience of travelers who had few other choices for miles. For a generation, the orange roof wasn't just a business. It was the backdrop to family vacations, Sunday drives, and the slow, hopeful sprawl of post-war America. Children remember the clatter of plates, the smell of fried clams, and the swirl of 28 flavors behind the counter. Parents remember the relief of a safe stop, a hot meal, and the certainty that at least for one meal, the world was as it should be. By the middle of the 1960s, Howard Johnson's had become a fixture on the American map, as familiar as the interstate highways themselves. In 1965, the company reported 770 restaurants and 265 motor hotels, a scale that dwarfed any competitor. The orange roof, with its turquoise shutters and Simple Simon weather vane, was now a national landmark, visible from Maine to Florida, California, to the Midwest. Families planned their vacations around these stops, trusting that a Hojo meal meant the same fried clams and 28 flavors of ice cream, no matter how far they had driven. The numbers tell the story of an empire at its height. More than 1,000 locations operated under the Howard Johnson's name by the mid-1960s, including roughly 500 motor lodges that offered a place to sleep just steps from the restaurant. Annual revenue hovered near $400 million, a staggering sum for the era, enough to place the company among the largest privately held food service businesses in the country. Highway billboards, neon signs, and magazine ads made the brand feel permanent, woven into the fabric of American travel itself. Howard Johnson's was not just a place to eat. It was shorthand for the era's optimism and mobility. It became a setting for Sunday drives, business trips, and the long, slow crawl of family station wagons heading toward the beach. Even decades later, a single Mad Men episode could conjure the entire era with a shot of a Hojo's parking lot. At its peak, the chain felt as enduring as the road itself, a symbol of safety, sameness, and a certain kind of American promise. The idea that it could ever disappear seemed almost unthinkable. In 1968, Howard Johnson stepped away from the company that bore his name. For decades, he had been the steady hand behind every menu change, every new motel, every orange roof rising along the highway. His departure as chairman left a quiet vacuum. 4 years later, in 1972, Howard passed away at the age of 75. The founder's presence, his taste for risk, his obsession with consistency, was gone for good. Leadership fell to his son, Bud Johnson. Bud inherited an empire at its most impressive scale, over 1,000 restaurants and hundreds of motor lodges, stretching from the Maine coast to the California desert. But what looked like a triumph was also a trap. The very formula that had made Howard Johnson's a household name, identical menus, rigid decor, the promise of the same fried clams and ice cream in every state, now began to feel like a set of chains. The world outside was changing fast. Fast food giants like McDonald's and Burger King were rewriting the rules of roadside dining. Travelers wanted speed, novelty, and lower prices. Inside Howard Johnson's, the answer to every challenge was more of the same. The same recipes, the same training, the same turquoise shutters and white walls. Bud tried to keep the course, trusting in the system his father built. But the company's devotion to sameness became a kind of stubbornness. What had been a living, growing business started to feel like a monument, grand, impressive, but fixed in place. For the first time, cracks appeared in the orange porcelain tiles. The sense of reassurance that drew families off the interstate began to harden into rigidity. Without the founder's vision, change seemed impossible, even as the road ahead grew less certain. The orange roofs once seemed as permanent as the highways themselves, but the world outside Howard Johnson's was shifting underfoot. As the 1950s gave way to a new era, the very roads that once fed the chain's success began to turn against it. The Interstate Highway system, signed into law by President Eisenhower in 1956, cut wide ribbons across the country, bypassing the old U.S. routes where Hojo's had staked its claim. Families who once wound their way through small towns now rocketed past them at 60 miles an hour, missing the familiar glow of neon and the promise of 28 flavors. Locations that had been gold mines on the old routes found themselves stranded, their parking lots empty save for a few loyal regulars. Meanwhile, the rules of roadside eating were being rewritten. Fast food chains like McDonald's and Burger King offered a new kind of promise: speed, predictability, and prices that made Hojo's full-service model look slow and expensive. The family ritual of sitting down for clam strips and ice cream began to feel old-fashioned. Travelers wanted to eat quickly and get back on the road. The orange roof, once a beacon of comfort, started to look like a relic from another time. Then came the oil embargo of 1973 and 1974. Gas prices doubled almost overnight, and the American road trip lost its sense of freedom. Families drove less, took shorter vacations, and watched every dollar. Howard Johnson's, built on the dream of endless highways and carefree travel, felt the squeeze. Sales faltered. Franchisees struggled to keep up. The brand's greatest strength, its devotion to a single, unchanging formula, became its weakness in a world that demanded flexibility and speed. In September 1979, the Johnson family made a fateful decision. The entire company, more than 1,000 restaurants and over 500 motor lodges, was sold to Imperial Group, a British conglomerate, for $630 million in cash. On paper, it was a staggering sum, proof that the brand still held real value. But Imperial Group had no roots in American road culture. Their priorities lay elsewhere, and the orange roof became just another asset on a foreign balance sheet. Ownership was now separated from the world of highways, ice cream counters, and the slow comfort of a Hojo meal. The chain stood at the crossroads, caught between a changing nation and a business model that could no longer bend. The orange roofs faded from the American landscape one by one. Through the 1980s and 1990s, the chain that once seemed as permanent as the highways themselves shrank to a shadow of its former self. In 1985, Marriott International bought the restaurant assets, 418 company-owned locations, snapped up for $97 million. But Marriott had no appetite for nostalgia. Many of the old restaurants were converted, sold off, or quietly closed, their turquoise shutters replaced by the colors of new tenants. The Howard Johnson's name, once a roadside guarantee, became more of a memory than a destination. By the early 2000s, only a handful of restaurants remained open, scattered like relics across the map. In 2006, the last of the trademarks passed to Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, sealing the fate of the dining side of the business. The name lived on in a few motels, but the restaurants, those places of fried clams and 28 flavors, were nearly gone. Industry observers saw the end coming. In 2001, Hospitality Review summed it up bluntly. Howard Johnson's had failed to react to a world that now moved at the speed of a drive-through. The menu that once promised comfort now felt frozen in time. The buildings, too, outlasted their purpose, standing as reminders of a different era, more inherited infrastructure than a living brand. In June 2022, the last Howard Johnson's restaurant in Lake George, New York, closed its doors after nearly 70 years. For many, the news felt less like a business closure than the loss of a national landmark. The irony is impossible to ignore. Howard Johnson's invented the franchise model that now fuels McDonald's, Burger King, and Holiday Inn. The template survived, even as the original vanished, leaving behind a bittersweet echo along the empty highways. Once, an orange roof meant a promise. Fried clams, 28 ice cream flavors, and the comfort of knowing exactly what you'd find from Maine to Miami. Today, only memories and faded postcards remain, where over 1,000 Howard Johnsons once stood. In a world of fleeting brands and shifting landscapes, the question lingers. Will anything ever feel that familiar again? Share your own roadside memories in the comments below.